Joining us on the show once again today is a returning champion to this podcast, a man, of course, you all know best as the head coach of the 2025 Division I Men's National Indoor Champions, a man I know best as the only coach who could make Houston Barrack a serviceable piece to the number one team in the country. Of course, welcome back onto the podcast, Wake Forest men's tennis head coach Tony Bresky. Coach, it is always good to see you. Welcome back to the show. How are you and the Deeks feeling as you get ready for the Sweet 16?
I'm good, buddy. Thanks for having me. I'll make sure to mention that to Houston.
Look, I always prided myself as a Houston Barrack type. Like, I want you to know, a little limited athletically, but just a leader out there. No, one of my favorites all time. I'm coming in hot today. Let me just ask you a quick tangent, set the tone as
Yeah.
always. Freshman Sanam Singh or freshman Luca Pow? Who wins the dual match and why?
Um, that's a good one, man. Those guys, they won a lot. I love both those guys, so I'm just gonna say it's a third set breaker. Decided by a net cord. So who knows?
That's a good answer. I want you to know there's an interview you did 2008 National Indoors. This is when I was diving first into Virginia YouTube videos where you talked about freshman Sanam. And I actually think that was what I was like, all right, I'm going to keep watching these. Like, I'm intrigued by all this stuff going on right now. And obviously, you've got some talented freshmen on your roster this season. I want to ask you about and where they rank in your players you've gotten to work with early in their careers. But let's just go big picture first. If I'd have told you on January 1st that entering the Sweet 16, your team would be the number one overall seed and 36-1 at this point of the year, what would you have said?
I would have said I'll sign for that right now. So we'll take it. I mean, look, I think going into the season, we knew we had a very good team. It's a long year in college tennis. Much like any other team, we've dealt with some injuries, some guys missing matches due to playing some pro events, quite a bit of sickness, stuff like that. And you have to have a lot of things go your way. We were very fortunate. We won, a few of the tight ones. Obviously lost the tight one at ACCs, which I think ultimately is actually really good for us. Like I said, the goal was never to go undefeated during the course of the year. I think what we did to get to that point through the regular season was a big credit to our guys and also a certain amount of luck that goes into that. And so we're excited for the postseason. We got off to a good start last weekend. And, like I said, if you would have told me that, I'd say, yep, let's go. We'll take that right now.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned that conference tournament loss to Virginia. Let's just start there. It is the old cliche that a late season loss like that can be the biggest blessing for a group in pursuit of a national championship. Can you explain why? Like, why was a loss like that helpful for this group entering the postseason?
Yeah, I think the biggest number one, you get it out of the way, right? You realize, you kind of stop protecting a little bit. You realize, okay, like losing's not the end of the world. Life continued. Everyone woke up the next day. We're all healthy, happy, get to do something we love. So okay, this isn't. I think people get too consumed with it. Takes out some of the nerves, and I think we have an incredibly motivated and driven and competitive group. So for anyone really competitive, losing hurts, and the hurt of losing inspires you to work maybe just that little bit harder or drives you just that little bit more. And I certainly saw that over the last 2 weeks. And I saw that with our match on Saturday against Kentucky. We lost a tight doubles point, obviously got moved indoors, which Kentucky's a good team. I think maybe a little better indoors, honestly. And so we weren't super excited about that. Nothing we could do. It was rain, so we dealt with that. And then the guys were super tough in singles and just kind of battled through it. And maybe that loss helped us a little bit there.
No, you talk about that Kentucky match. Obviously, for those that didn't get the chance to see it, 4-1, you knocked them out in the round of 32. There was a moment, like if my texts ever get leaked, I sent a text to my little brother, like, hey, Wake Forest is in some trouble right now. Down one love, and those tie breaks on 2, 4, 5, all happening almost simultaneously. What was going through your mind in that moment? And again, to see all three of those guys take tie breaks and ultimately you're able to kind of run away with it from there. How does a moment early in a tournament like that help this group?
I think it helps a ton. I think it was a good, tough, emotional match, like you said, which had some close moments. I mean, honestly, in that moment, I have learned that I do my best coaching when I'm not really looking at the scoreboard and I'm focusing on, and which I preach to the guys a lot, and just focus on the courts I was on, which was Luca and Tachi, and trying to help those guys as much as I can and stay present there, much like I try to teach them. So I think a little credit to me there where I actually did that and didn't focus too much on, oh, what if, it's just a, hey, utter belief in our guys that even if we lose all three of those breakers, they're going to come back and win. So really first set still early in the match, so not overthinking that much.
No, it's a credit to you. I agree. And it's a credit to the guys that are able to pull through in that moment. And watching the end of that first set, watching DK win his tiebreak, and DK in particular, who, given the absence of Steph for chunks of this season, he was asked to step up into that number one spot, was 10-3 at that top spot this year. I feel like there's more edge, even more so than anything that's changed tennis wise. Like, he is playing with some swagger now. I'm curious if I'm on to something, if you've noticed that this season.
Yeah, I certainly think he's taken a step forward. I think obviously last year, his first year in our program, it's interesting. DK he's obviously an older guy as a junior, but from a tennis standpoint, he's really still just like 20, 21 years old. Like he had about a 2.5 year span where he didn't play tennis because of COVID and situation in India and some injuries. And then talking to him, George Kouanet, a little bit of a different environment than here from a practice expectation standpoint. So, I think he's still just coming into his own and kind of learning about himself as a player. And I think he's developed a lot more belief in himself and his game now.
Yeah, no, you're seeing that, and certainly, again, a lot of talent on this roster this
Yeah.
season. Whenever I am speaking with my little brother, we do 5 minutes on Charlie, and like, what's the Charlie update? How's he looking up?
Yeah.
And he dropped a tough one in your team's opening round match. To see him
Yeah. Yeah.
respond the way that he did in the second round against Kentucky, talk me through the Charlie experience, because as freshman ball striking goes, he's up there on the list.
For sure. Look, Charlie's a freshman. He's a January freshman. I think the talent and the ability is there. And I think, it's funny. He lost to Gardner Webb also earlier in the year at two singles. And so he's had a couple where, without going into too much details, as any freshman does, had way too much going on in his head about expectations and stuff, and where his tennis is and college and stuff like that. So maybe a couple not his best moments, but if you really look at it coming into NCAAs, he was absolutely rolling. I don't know what it was, what it is, 6, 7, 8 match win streak, something like that. I think he beat Hopper at ACC's like 2-1, and he's playing some great tennis. So I would have bet a lot of money on Charlie winning on Saturday. Just could tell, had that chat with him in the morning, kind of was like, right, I messed up yesterday. He knew, just like I said, without going into full details, a lot of stuff going on. And I knew he was ready to go. Saw him hit for 5 minutes in the morning. And I was like, I feel like we're up 1-0. So, he's just that level, And so I think if he's on, he's one of the best freshmen in the country, no doubt about it.
When you have someone like him, there's the old saying, you don't want to put a silencer on a shotgun. What's the first step in working with someone who is as explosive as he can be in trying to
Yeah.
help him get to the next level?
Oh, I think he has a lot that we work on in his game. I mean, obviously, look, for someone his size,
Yeah.
the physicality of it, right? He obviously has serious aspirations of playing pro tennis. So, you look at him and you look at guys that are top 100, and they're grown men. They are full. We see it at our ATP event. They're full professional athletes. Tennis being one of the toughest physical sports in the world, in my opinion. And he knows he's got a lot of work to do to get there in the gym, on the court with his physicality. At his size, he's going to have to be one of the fittest and one of the strongest and most athletic guys on the tour. So he can endure with his body. So he can go play tournaments and go win a 5 and 6 in the third and come out and do it the next day and the next day, right? So I think that's probably the first thing that we've kind of tried to put a focus on. And then obviously just certain aspects of his game, just understanding the difference, say, between top end junior tennis to pro tennis. And I think for a lot of the juniors, it's hard to understand that college tennis is a significant step up over junior tennis, even at the elite level. which I think they don't quite understand because they get in those slams, they get in the moment, they're around all the pros, they're beating guys that are 15, 20 in the world. They're feeling like they're really good. And you get to college and you start playing 3-4 and you're like, holy cow, these guys are better than those guys.
Yeah.
You know, they're older, they're more mature. They don't care that you won some, G2 in Thailand or that you're the number 1 or 2 player in your country. They just don't care. And it's a bit of a mental adjustment, and it's the same adjustment you're going to have when you get on the tour and you're off playing futures in Monastery or Charm and you're playing some 27-year-old man who just doesn't care if you were a good junior.
Yeah. No, I
So,
think
so those are some of the biggest things.
I think it's very fair. I think watching him continue to develop has been one of my favorite subplots of this 2025 season, certainly. And yeah, to your point, I think he's 7-1-2 in his last 10. So playing some really good ball here to end the year. Here's a number for you: 58 matches, dual matches he's finished so far in his career. Luca Pow is 53-5. And by the way, that he's gotten 58 matches completed in his first 2 dual match springs. Applause to you, my friend.
Yeah.
Still the best in the business at it. How? Like, what is it that he does every day that it can be this consistent every weekend?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Luca's a competitive beast, right? So it's interesting. I joke with my guys, man, when we had doubleheaders when I played, I never didn't want to play because I was like, well, I have to be here, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to be here, I might as well play it. It's, I know tennis has changed. The athletes have changed. A lot of the guys are like, doubleheaders. Anytime I've never heard Luca say he didn't want to play a doubleheader. Every time we have one, he's like, yep, play me wherever. If you need me at 1, whatever, I'll go play. And he does it. And he just goes and works on his game. And that's kind of who he is as a player, right? It's just, he almost never has a bad day in practice. He's always got a great attitude. Certainly he has some things in his game that he needs to work on to jump another level, but his competitive spirit and his drive is, off the charts.
Yeah, no, it's so impressive what he has done. And by the way, we did our half, it's one of my things I hope to accomplish in this role is I want, the way the NBA has first team, second team, all NBA, I want first team, second team, all best lineups to become part of the ITA awards. And Luca, who was our pick at the mid-year mark, had already played all 6 positions in your singles lineup by the halfway mark of the year, which is just impressive. Like, it's just hit the cycle. That's not something you see every day, and so certainly impressed by him. I'm curious after this weekend, given how sound you guys have been in doubles, is there any, again, you could always play with a lineup. I'm always ready for it. Is there any thoughts of, well, we've had some success doing a bunch of different things. Might you tinker down this tournament's home stretch?
Well, we already did. We changed it up for this weekend. We put Giannis back with DK, Pow back with Tachi, Steph sticking with Charlie. So feel like we have 3 really good teams. And honestly, we felt like we had 3 really good teams going into Kentucky, and they played a great point. We lost a breaker. So that's doubles. We talked about that a lot. Just understanding. We've obviously been very fortunate on the double side to be as good as we have. And we do have some great dubs guys. And, we'll see. It's kind of I don't necessarily like the change in the ability to change lineups through the NCAA tournament. I kind of like it the way it was in the past. Hey, you put in your lineup for the whole tournament. Having said that, then they made that change, and they allowed us to make changes, and we made a couple. So kind of using the rules to our advantage. I don't necessarily like it, but so we did it. We'll see how it goes this weekend.
I will just ask it bluntly. Do you anticipate Pau Tachi will get protested? Silas Robertson, the 2 changes I think you guys made?
Well, it didn't.
Okay.
The protests were due.
Okay.
No, I mean, look, Charlie and Steph are undefeated.
Yeah.
And Giannis and DK were 8-2 with one of their losses coming in a 10-point breaker to the NCAA champs. So, look, I think part of the reason we actually made the change midway was we felt like Pau and Tachi had actually got a little stale. If you look at their results there midway through the year, they kind of hit a bit of a skid, and they were probably 50-50 or 60-40, So I think realistically, honestly, with those teams, I could probably play it in very many different ways according to the rules, which is I can't even say I know, right? It's on the day, it's on the practice. So those teams are very even. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. Could I put Pau and Tachi at 1 maybe if I wanted to? Sure. I think the argument of DK anywhere but 1 it gets a little awkward. I think a lot of people, me including, thinks he's the best doubles player in college, right? So you put him out with a lot of people. And then how do you argue with Steph and Charlie? And I don't think they've even got to like a 7-5 yet. So it's just you just have a lot of really good teams.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, and certainly looking forward to seeing them play out once again here this weekend with the Switch. I'm always also ready for the Steph DK combination from indoors to come back and just run those back.
Yeah,
I've always got it in the
yeah,
back pocket. You guys certainly
for
have your
sure.
your options this season. And by the way, having all of those options, I know this is something we've talked about in the past. You feel like you were able to play everyone as much as you wanted this season? Obviously, we were able to see a lot of different guys get looks in your lineups in different positions all year long. That was intentional, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And I think we look the reality of when we recruited Steph, he probably played even more than I thought he might
Yeah.
for us. The goal was to have a lot of guys have that experience. Like I said, the goal was never to go undefeated over the course of the year,
Mm-hmm.
right? So our guys did an amazing job. He really only missed like 4 or 5 matches for pro events. He actually missed a couple that people don't know about due to sickness and an injury here or there, right? So he missed a couple that he was going to play for other reasons. And I think that allowed us to get some other guys in there, which they really needed to have that depth. And we're lucky right now. We're going into the NCAA tournament healthy, which, I know not everyone has that luxury of doing.
Mm-hmm.
But we certainly feel very comfortable if something does happen. We have a couple guys there that have got a ton of matches. I think the double headers also allow us to. I think we maybe overdid it this year with the double headers. I knew we'd have a large team and a deep team, so might have overdone that a little bit, and that might have wore us out a little bit at the end as well. But at the same time, it let a lot of guys get a lot of matches in.
No, I read the contract. It's an extra $1,000 for every win over 36.
Fair
So
enough.
yeah, so
Fair
why
enough.
not?
Yeah.
I like it. It's again, we're here to play. Let's play. So I
But
always
we
have.
we yeah, look, we like playing. Our guys like playing. We enjoy competing, so we're trying to maximize those 25. And I know we do it differently than others, but it's our system, and we believe in it.
Well, you mentioned those 25 competitive dates. Obviously, in managing those, the ACC this season elected not to play everyone in the conference with a year of data and how it feels in review. Is that something you want to reconsider?
You know what? I doubt they're going to ask me that question and give me the same to make that decision. But I didn't vote for it. I didn't like it. I like playing everybody. It's a great conference. Obviously, it turned out to be the best conference in the country this year. Which each and every year, I think it's always either the best or second best conference. It's right up there. It's always debatable, but I would prefer to play everybody. I think uh, we got lucky this year. We had an amazing match at the end of the year with NC State. They were undefeated. We were undefeated, and we knew that would decide the conference. I would hate to see a situation where two teams are undefeated or have one loss but didn't get to play each other during the year. So this year we didn't play Duke and UNC, which that seems silly. Based on the logistics. I know they have to do that, but I would prefer to play everybody if it was up to me.
Yeah, I heard Coach Calvis came on the show and made the best argument I've heard for why not, which is if you want to schedule them, just schedule them. I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of concern about the 500 rule. I guess because you are such a prominent example, how hard is it to schedule those doubleheaders? Like in your region, if a reason a coach doesn't want to do this is because they're nervous about that 500 rule, do you think that
Yeah.
is a very maneuverable thing?
Well, yes, I do. I think when I see teams not make the NCAA tournament at Power Five conferences because they're not 500, I'm like, yeah, you really didn't do a great job with your scheduling. I just think okay, part of it is it depends on your location in the country,
Yeah.
but where we are, there's enough teams that are willing to come play you. Now, I will say there is concern for that moving forward. When you start talking about teams having roster caps of 8 or 9, 10 at most, I know there's some teams going to 8. I do wonder if that's something we need to reconsider.
Yeah.
Um, maybe it's not as important moving forward. Um, but I think in the past it was very manageable. I know some women's coaches have said that, they're obviously in a different situation into how many girls they carry because of scholarships. So that certainly maybe makes a little bit more sense on their side. Where on the guys' side, we've had the luxury of carrying more players,
Mhm.
and I think it's great for them to get the matches, so it's a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fascinating thing, and you're right. These roster sizes will very much impact what these
Yeah.
changes looks like. Are we going to provide athletes 5 years, just total eligibility? That's what we're going to do. A lot of fun changes, certainly on the horizon. As you look at your team this year, again, 36-1. Is there a match you learned the most about this group this year? Is there one you were proudest of? Like, what match stands out to you as the match you will remember from this season to date?
Yeah, well, I can tell you the one I'll remember the most. It's the loss at ACC's. It's just, can't stop thinking about it. So it's just, if you're competitive and you lose it, that's what it's going to be. And there's only one, thank God. So that was just like a night of sleep we lost and we're able to move on from there. Obviously, look, the one I'm probably the proudest of is the national indoor title. Just getting over that with Steph clinching that with a great third set was obviously an awesome experience for the guys. And then I think just overall, I think we take a ton of pride in winning the ACC regular season and going undefeated there. I think it means more than the ACC tournament, in my opinion, just because it's the length of the season, right? And especially when you're in the position that we were in heading into ACC play as the number one team in the country, undefeated. You're getting everyone's best shot. Everyone's playing loose. When you go on the road, they're going to have the most fans. I think we had maybe 3 matches this year where our match at someone else's place was the um, most rated or highly touted match in the history of that program, right? When we went to NC State, it was like 1 versus 4, and when we went to Columbia, it was like 1 versus 5, and we went to Clemson, it was like 1 versus 19. I know they've been great in the past, but it's the best they've been in a long, long time. So having that experience for the guys, and every time you go there, they fill the stands and they're ready to go, and you're getting their best effort. For our guys to rise up to the occasion is tough to do on a week by week basis.
Yeah, I think the number they reported was 2,000 people at that NC State match. Was it that ruckus?
It was, yeah. They
Yeah,
had a great crowd. Obviously we had a lot of supporters too. So
yeah.
I don't know if it was 2,000, maybe 12 or 1,300, something like that. But yeah, the place was packed, and we did a great job there going on the road. So I think we've handled that environment really well. The Dallas final was pretty packed with TCU fans. So we're up for that challenge, I think.
No, yeah, it was it's been very cool to follow. I think the social media team, by the way, has done an outstanding job. It was very funny to
Yeah.
hear my own voice in a video. I don't remember saying humbled in that connotation. I think it was in a broader of, but they're still the number one seeds. But I'll take it. I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was very very fun. All
He does a great job.
Yeah, outstanding. What's one thing if you could go back and reallocate time in practice? What's one thing you would practice more with this group?
I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like we've done it pretty well, honestly. I think we're in a good spot. I mean, you can always go back and pick on. I don't think it's as a group, right? Like we do a lot of individual work, so I think it would probably be maybe one thing individually for each player, which obviously I won't go into details about what that would be. So that would really be it. It would be more an individual specific thing for each player.
That makes a lot of sense. Has this group obviously it's as much about the external as it is the execution of on the tennis court. Teams got to love each other in moments like that. Got
Yeah.
to trust each other. How have you guys gone about building that with a group that is older but is still very new amongst one another?
Yeah, it's funny. You said it's older, and yet we have like 6 freshmen
Yeah,
on the team,
exactly.
that are all like 18 years old. So it's a mix. We just okay, like we've talked about, we just have a large group, which is abnormally large.
Yeah.
We probably have 4 guys that we didn't anticipate being here. Which we would have still had a large team. But it just panned out that way, and it's a lot of management, but and a lot of time on court. But we enjoy it, and they're all. I think the biggest thing is that we all have really good kids where the majority of our guys all have aspirations of playing pro tennis. And so you put a lot of like-minded people like that together with the coaching staff we have, and you're bound to have success, in my opinion. I think a lot of kids say they want to play pro tennis in the recruiting process, and it's the coach's job to really weed that out and say, do these kids really want it, or are they just saying that? And then you get the right ones and you put them together, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Who controls the aux cord in the locker room?
The what? Sorry.
Who gets the aux cord? Who gets to pick? Hey, this is the music we're jamming to.
Probably Franco.
That's
He's
what
the
I
captain.
figured.
Probably Franco. I would guess it's him.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. And again, certainly it's a fun group. Anyone who's gotten to spend some time with them this season, this is a group you added to in many different ways. Whether it's recruiting them as 40-year guys, whether it's through the portal. I know I've asked a version of this before, but with this week being portal week, everything open, how essential is the portal to how you construct your roster in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're not going to recruit the portal, you're probably not competing these days, right? It's just a big part of college athletics and college tennis. There's a lot of good guys on there. I think it's baffling that the NCAA decides to open the portal before the season ends.
It's crazy.
To me, I don't think it's fair to the kids. It's not fair to the teams. It's not fair to the coaches. I don't understand how they can just not wait another 2 weeks. There's still plenty of time to get things done, right? And that would be the one change that I would make to it. But yeah, certainly, look, the portal is a big part of it. And there's certain guys that are going to be good fits for your program. And there's reasons it didn't work out at their current school. Obviously, for us, the addition of Steph this year through the portal was huge. And it's something we're going to continue to pursue in the future.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. The other side of that coin in revenue sharing is going to change a lot of this, but I want to ask every coach this question because I think last summer was the wild, wild west of, all right, there's no way that kid was actually offered that in NIL. This can't be true. Like, what are we talking about?
Totally agree with you.
And so on that note, though, how prevalent is that as part of the recruiting conversation? Like, how quickly does that come up whether it be a freshman or a transfer player, when you are recruiting players today?
Yeah, I think it comes up a lot. I think you're spot on in that I think those numbers are overinflated, and the problem is other kids out there now think that those numbers are out there. And yeah, look, I do know there's probably a couple schools out there that are doing pretty big numbers. I don't think a lot of schools are, and I think those numbers are a lot smaller than people think. And I think a lot of people, if they're just chasing the dollars, are going to be very disappointed in what they hear over the next couple of weeks here.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. And I'm fascinated to see as well how the revenue sharing piece impacts all of that, because certainly it will. All right, my last two questions for you.
And I will say before you go on there, the revenue sharing is interesting. And it's just going to be how lucky some schools get. And I think it will be few and far between many tennis programs that are actually going to get any revenue sharing at all, just because most of it's going to go to football and basketball. I'll tell you, we are going to be lucky enough that we're going to get some. It's not going to be a crazy number, but we will get some. And I do anticipate that will be better than 95% of schools out there. I just don't think it's going to be that prominent in tennis.
Yeah, I think I agree with you as well. I think, again, the biggest unknown is also how will roster cuts and scholarship cuts impact that part of the revenue sharing as well. Will they try to make up for it from that? Like, there are just so many unknowns as it relates to the financials.
100%. And until the settlement gets finalized, what they're going to do with this grandfathering piece, right? How that's going to work, what you're able to be. Obviously, we have a larger number. We have a ton of seniors, so we do lose a lot. But if we do have to get down to 10, we are going to have to cut 2 or 3 guys, or are we going to be able to keep those guys if they do want to stay? I haven't had a lot of those conversations yet, just because we're still in the season. But is it like hey, do you want to jump on and see, or you want to grind it out here? Let's see what this grandfathering thing is like. So I think there's so many unknowns. And that's another one of those unknowns with like the NIL and how, what is the case as far as, are they really going to govern it? Are they going to stop people from getting money? There's certainly going to be a loophole in it somehow, I'd imagine, and how does that work? So there's just a lot of pieces to that.
My dream scenario is in August, the USTA will run back the rent out a restaurant for all the college coaches at Kalamazoo who are there watching players and make it an open bar. And let's get 3 drinks in everyone and just figure some stuff out. What do we want it to look like? And we'll run the round table. We'll just throw some truths.
I love it. I love it. Unfortunately, I doubt the NCAA is going to care at all what men's tennis coaches think. So,
Not an unfair response to that. Well, then again, my last two questions for you. I'm going to ask you to put on your pundit hat here. Obviously, I know you are very locked into your matchup. You guys are taking on Texas A&M Friday, 5 p.m. But if it wasn't your matchup, and I'll list you the options just in case you don't have them top of head: Texas, Tennessee, NC State, Columbia, UCLA, USC, Virginia, Arizona, Ohio State, Mississippi State, Stanford, South Carolina, TCU, UCF. Which would intrigue you most and why?
NC State, Columbia, because then I can do all my scouting. No, I think that one, and obviously,
That's good.
I think Arizona, Virginia. I'd love to just go watch Colton play Rafa. You know, two guys that have been great for college tennis. I think that'll be an unbelievable match.
And you have the last year's Junior U.S. Open boys singles champion versus a guy Tennis Abstract's ELO ratings have as the 45th best player in the world right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a conversation of do we give it its own feed? Like, what do we figure out to do with that match? And so certainly that will be a good one. My last question for you, obviously coming up, you guys have a big matchup with A&M. I'm curious what you view as their biggest strength and what it's going to take for your guys to continue to advance.
Yeah, it seems like that they just have tremendous depth.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at their roster, they probably have three or four guys not playing that are excellent players. I know JC is out. I don't know exactly what his situation is, so that's very unfortunate for them. He's an excellent player, but just testament to them and credit to them that they can have a guy like that of his level out and they still advance to the round of 16 and are still an excellent team 1 through 6. So we'll expect really tough battles at every spot, and Steve does a great job with their program, and we'll be excited to play them.
Yeah, it's going to be a very fun match. Again, 5 p.m. Friday. Looking forward to following it. Head coach Tony Bresky, always a pleasure to get the chance to chat with you, my friend. Obviously, good luck to you and the Deeks here this weekend, and appreciate you always taking the time.
Thanks, buddy. Have a great day.
Record